we may not be able to control how long we get to play on this amazing planet, but ultimately we, not our circumstances, not our critics, not our fans, nobody else controls how epically we live while we are playing here than we do.
Hi, and welcome to Helping People Perform, the podcast that gives you fascinating insights into those people whose chosen vocation is to help others perform at their best. From consultants to teachers, sports coaches to financial advisors, all of my guests share a passion for getting the most out of individuals, teams, and organisations. Enjoy the episode. Hi everybody, and welcome to another episode of Helping People Perform. Really excited about this episode because I'm joined by a very special guest all the way from Florida in the States. We have CEO at Grit Mindset Academy. Welcome to the show today, Meridith Alexander.
Woo! I am so glad to be here, and thank you all for being here, because we would not be here without you.
Thanks so much. For a massive shout out to my great audience who are out there, and I'm sure we're going to have an amazing experience here and learn a lot. We've had some conversations before this, and there's a lot to talk about and a lot to get through. So maybe let's kick things off with a bit of your backstory. What got you to where you are today, Meridith?
Sure. So I think it's fair to say that I was one of those who, when I was in my 20s, I thought I knew. I was like, I know exactly what my life is going to look like. I was going to some of the best schools. I had it mapped out. I was positive. And then shockingly, as some of you your jaws may be dropping right now, there was a point when I looked in the mirror and I went, what happened here? I am not at all where I thought I would be. And in the ways where I am where I thought it would be, I don't feel like I thought I would be feeling. So I theoretically, I was doing well in my career. I was a mompreneur, so I had become a single mom. I was a single mom most of my life. I was also, the breadwinner, the mother, the father, the taxi driver. I was everything, right. Putting like 40,000 miles on my car every single day and managing to write millions of dollars of contracts in the entertainment business for other people who are on the stage. Things were stressful because I felt like I was trying to be everything for everyone. And I felt like I was kind of failing. I was paying what I fondly call the stupid tax by being a perfectionist and constantly doubting myself, trying to please everyone and every moment. However, the kids were doing really well. My son had already become, 30 under 30. My other daughter was moving up the ranks in NBC, and my youngest daughter had just graduated from Yale, and she was on a fellowship down in South America. And so just when I was trying, just about to take a sigh of relief and say, I did it. Thank you. I did it. The phone rang. And it was the middle of a Friday afternoon at the very start of my busy season. And for those of you who may not be in the entertainment business as a booking agent, you may not know that a lot of these shows that you see at a lot of these theaters, they're booked within a 3-month window. Right. That's the entire time when the budget is released. You either book it in that 3-month window or you cannot even give it away most of the times. Right. So here I was at the start of my booking window, and I got the call. And I think this is a call that if you've ever been a parent or if you've ever loved someone or something, this is the call you hope you never get. And immediately from the inhale, I knew that my life was about to change. It was Skylar's friend sharing with me that this boulder that had been attached to the side of a mountain in Colombia, South America, had come crashing down and made direct impact with Skylar. It had cracked open her skull, crushed her lungs, fractured her spine, fractured both scapulas, snapped her right thigh, and pulverized her left ankle. Wow. And by medical precedent, going back thousands of years, just the injury to her skull alone was typically not survivable. So I became the reluctant hero in this story. Instantly. There I was on the plane with my other daughter. My son stayed in the States, and just wondering what I was going to make of this. And I, as you can imagine, just about every negative emotion was just whirling around, gripping me, until really having spent a little bit of time, and this is part of the beauty of it, it didn't happen in Florida. It happened in Colombia, South America. So I had to spend hours at 30,000 feet on the plane. And so this is really where I had the moment to have that conversation with myself, with, what I call God universe, and really try to make sense of all of this, including my role. What was I going to focus on, and what was I going to make this mean? And the most incredible thing for me in that experience was the realization, one, that the worst emotion of them all was feeling powerless to help my daughter.
Right.
The rage, the despair, all of that, the inadequacy was one thing, but feeling powerless to help my daughter was what really was the trigger for me. And so it was as if this voice came raging out of inside of me and said, wait a minute, this is not your first boulder. There have been many boulders in your life, and each one has pushed you to learn. So, we've all heard a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder. We don't hear a lot about post-traumatic stress growth.
Right.
And for me, that's something that I really had learned in the form of it. It had all the trauma, all the terrible things, the moments of tears and frustration and feeling like I'm not going to be able to do this, had led me to immerse myself in studying people who faced insurmountable boulders and emerged as bigger boulder versions of themselves. How did they do it? It was always the inner game. So I had spent decades studying every aspect. And again, I don't use the word inner game or as the same as mindset. Mindset is a teeny portion of that. It is a very important aspect of it. But to me, mindset sometimes is more reactive. The inner game is a lifestyle. It is a state of being. And so it's everything from your energy, from, again, your focus, your language, all that kind of thing. And so what I realized is I may not be able to control the outer game, but I sure as heck could play a mean inner game. Yeah. So in that moment for my daughter, I made the commitment that I was going to play the inner game to win, like I had never played it before. So by asking myself some new questions, focusing on some new things, I was able to get myself one tiny thought at a time. It's just, sometimes we try to make the leap too big. This was one tiny thought. For example, where I started was my mind had to be able to believe that what everyone was telling me is impossible. Yeah, it's possible. I had to find a way to logically believe this. This was not a moment to go into the bathroom mirror on the plane and go, I am willing this forward. I had to believe it. And so that came from asking myself the question, had anyone throughout humanity ever achieved something that everyone else said was impossible? Well, that was ironically laughable, because there I was on this huge tube flying 30,000 feet, right? It doesn't get much more impossible than that, right? So from there, I was able to really progress to a point where it really felt even much stronger than just believing. It was a sense of knowing, the expectation that everything was going to be fine, whatever the new fine was going to end up being. And that was what allowed me to show up at this little hospital hours and hours later in Socorro, Colombia, as this force to be reckoned with. And as I shared that perspective with Skylar's group around the world via Facebook, and it was pure inner game. It was not, sharing the photos of her fighting for her life in a hospital. It was showing photos of her most vibrant, saying, look, if you want to cheer us on, then you go out and you do, quote unquote, the I'm possible things. You go out, you live your dreams, you smile at the people and in the elevator, you go out and find that epic version of you, and that will empower us. And so people began to really share that. And that's ultimately what became the Sky is the Limit book, those first 4 months of posts. And so fast forward, we began to see things in Skylar's physical recovery that were impossible. There's still, if you were to look at, I believe it's CAT scan of her brain, you could still see a shaded area that typically only exists if someone has not made it or if they're vegetative. And clearly, if you see her Facebook page, you will see that she is working on, being able to walk as soon as possible, relatively independently with a walker.
Right.
And that is still, even though this occurred 8 years ago, it still is just the beginning. And so that led me to the point, again, fast forward, where technically she was released from the hospital, but at that point she could not be left alone to sit by herself.
Right.
I needed to be with her 24/7. So aside from having missed the booking season, which destroyed my income for a year, I couldn't dive back in and rescue my business because I needed to be there with her.
Right.
So it was a really yet another kind of invisible boulder falling on us, where I had no idea how or where that income was going to come from. And this is where I realized that that kind of formula, which was starting to become more apparent to me. I mean, my gosh, if this could help us in the ICU when Sky was fighting for her life, are you telling me it can't help my business?
Yeah.
And so that's where people started asking me to speak on stages, asked me to kind of coach what they had seen. And by leaning into what I call the 3 masteries that are now the part of the other book, The 100 Days of Epic, it really allowed me to help not only myself and grow my own business, but I found that I was able to help, whether it was entrepreneurs, aspiring coaches, or those in professionals, all the way up to the C-suite in the corporate world, break through things that they had been struggling with sometimes for decades, that they hadn't been able to see. They'd been, trial and error. They'd tried other methods. They'd tried the plan B, which ended up being the plan Z. And I fell in love with it. And before I knew it, I had coached and trained thousands of individuals and had the joy of watching people discover a part of themselves, as had I, that they didn't even suspect existed, and find joy. In some cases, some of the people were coming to me to switch careers.
Yep.
And I helped them realize, well, first and foremost, you take yourself with you wherever you go. So I would be doing you a disservice to immediately say, okay, here's the secret, which I can show you how to go out there. I can help you nail an interview like no one else can. That said, you nail the interview, but you still take you.
Right.
Where do you think you're going to be, or what do you think you're going to be feeling 6 months from now? Let's clean up you. Let's help you fall back in love with you. And what's interesting is that for some people, it helped them figure out how to fall in love with what they were doing. Right. Which meant they began doing what they loved and discovering that pretty much anything was possible for them as well when they learned how to play that, how to become the sovereign of their own mind. Does that make sense?
It certainly does. And I mean, such an amazing story. And we've chatted before this, and
yes.
The correspondence we've had beforehand, the whole story of one, Skylar's recovery, but the ability and the aim of going, do you know what? Let's refocus in terms of what we can do,
yes.
and let's particularly, it spoke to me a lot as my daughter who's got special needs, and we needed to. Often people from the outside will say, aren't you brave? How are you doing all of these things? And it's just, well, this is the hand we've been dealt. And you can either choose to, you go back to the Shawshank Redemption, you get busy living,
right.
or you get busy dying. What
right.
are you going to do? So
right.
take that step of, let's get busy focusing on the things that we can do for the positive.
And I love your word. I think this is really important. That's why I hop in here. Notice, you should be leaning into whatever you're listening to this on at this moment with that word focus, because that to me is a secret sauce word. It's one of the 3 masteries.
Right.
And many of you who are listening to this may have heard, Tony Robbins or whoever say, what you focus on, expand. And yet what I find is that people come to me saying, oh my gosh, I promise you, I've been focusing on my bank account, but it is not expanding. This does not work. And what I find is that it absolutely does work. What doesn't work is we have not been trained to realize what we're focusing on. Right. So for the most part, if we were to have a conversation, two people having a conversation about where you want to be a year from now, most of those conversations would look like, a year from now, I want to have a better job. I want my own business to explode. I want to be making six figures. I want to be, living in a better place. I want to get my kids in that school, la, 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 la. And we think we're talking about what we want. We absolutely are not. Our focus is on the lack of the presence of what we want.
Right.
So it's a checklist of all the things that are missing. So as you and I have talked about before, I get the same question in the context of, my gosh, how can you always stay focused, looking on the bright side? And my response every single time is because I absolutely am not looking on the bright side. Because if you think about it, when you try to look on the bright side, what are you actually focused on? The big looming dark side. You just are trying really hard not to look at it. So to your kind of point, how can you, the listener, take what we're saying here and translate that into 3 questions that you should always be asking yourself, especially when you start to feel that sandpapery rub, when something is quote unquote rubbing you the wrong way. There are 3 questions that can really start to clean things up for you. One is, what can I control? Where we tend to have heard that before. Sometimes we don't pay attention to it. We waste a lot of times trying to control the things that we actually have no business trying to control, but we certainly can't control them. But number 1, what can I control? Number 2, this is a tricky one because it's easily misinterpreted. What can my mind believe? So often when we hear that, we take that passively as if something that I observe or something that I hear, I either believe it or I don't. Well, yes and no, but go back to what I did on the plane. If I know that in order to accomplish that alignment, that openness, that empowerment to do what will move me forward, my mind has to believe that.
Right.
So therefore, how do I, the sovereign, if I choose to be, the sovereign of the thoughts that go on in my own mind, how do I kind of virus protect those thoughts, quarantine the ones that disempower me, and focus on the thoughts that will amplify the direction that I'm going? It's absolutely Henry Ford's statement, if you think you can or think you can't, you're right. So therefore, how can I help my mind think that I can? So number 2 is, what can my mind believe? And in parentheses, how can I get it to believe what I need it to believe, right? And that it comes from asking those simple questions. And then to me, the third question is one of the most profound, game-changing questions that we virtually never remember to ask ourselves. And that is, what might I be assuming right here, right now, that is not necessarily true? And so for me, as I sat on that plane, I realized that the initial temptation was to assume that because these experts were looking at medical precedent and said, you need to be bracing yourself. The outcome of this, historically, I mean, it's almost impossible that she can survive this. Yeah. And so you need to be preparing yourself. That is the rational, realistic way to approach this. Well, I was assuming initially that, well, that must be true. I have these experts telling me this. Well, what if it's not? Or what if it's not the only version of truth? From their perspective, that might be truth. There may be thousands of years of proof that no one survives this. However, there are also thousands of years of proof that these unexplained, quote unquote, miracles happen to people all day long. So which one empowers me? Not the one where my daughter ends up physically dying, or that's the end of the story if physically she does. Right? That there's no future for me, that if she dies, then I am destined to go through the rest of my life defining myself simply as the mother of a child who was tragically killed by a boulder. Right? That is not the given here. So that, what am I assuming that is not necessarily true, is a really important question that you should ask, especially when talking about your quote unquote challenges.
Brilliant stuff, and just some simple questions in and of themselves in terms of the wording of them, but it takes a lot of effort, a lot of real focus, as you say, to actually really get to grips with what are the true answers for me, what are the true answers
Yes.
for my circumstances, so that I can choose to empower myself, as you say. What's the things that I can choose to believe to empower myself to achieve what I want to achieve? And I think that's a wonderful question. I just wanted to expand it a little bit. You mentioned there about that focus is one of those three masteries.
Yes.
What are the other
Yes.
two?
Well, the other two, the first one is focus. The second is language.
Right.
Language is so important because it really is a symptom of what we believe to be true. And so, for example, a lot of people come to me saying, well, here's what I think my biggest challenge is right now. And so the words there act as programming code. So challenge, of course, no word is just a word. It comes with all these associations and invisible stories. So in that context, when we say the word challenge, it conjures up visions of, oh my gosh, this is going to be so hard, right? I've tried everything, right? And then we amplify it with biggest. Yeah. Well, as you know, you can't have something can't be the biggest if there are only one. Yeah. So now your lovely mind is saying, well, even if you do solve this one, there are plenty more problems behind that, right? So again, the heaviness just got even deeper. And then you add the word my to it, and it becomes part of who you are. So therefore, when you walk into your greatest opportunity, you walk in with two eyes, nose, mouth, and this big freaking challenge that goes, ooh, maybe I'm not ready. Maybe I can't trust myself to assess if this really is. What if they're trying to scam me? I mean, so you've got all these layers and layers that are embedded into the programming code, but probably the most powerful of those is the word is, because it goes completely under the radar. What we say in the present tense, we always assume is truth. That is our truth. We never say, I mean, even here in the States, we often say, oh, it is what it is. Well, guess what? Your it is what it is may not be my it is what it is. But once you put that stamp on it, you're like, nope, can't argue with this. Right. So what I work on, and just to kind of backtrack to one of your points before of really introspecting and looking at ourselves, there is a time where we have to realize that even Einstein said you cannot solve a problem with the same mind that created it. And so we can get ourselves trapped on this lovely little hamster wheel, trying to figure out what is in our blind spot, right? And this is where at some point you will be doing yourself a favor when you get qualified help to kind of compress years into months, months into weeks, weeks into sometimes days. And it can give you a shift just like that you've been trying. You've been watching all the YouTubes, you've been listening, and you've been trying to figure this out on your own. And don't beat yourself up if it's rough. It's rough for all of us, right? And so what I work with my clients is helping them vis-a-vis the language. Okay, so let's go back to what can my mind believe? Well, my biggest challenge is my confidence. That's true. What do you want me to do? Pretend like it's not? Okay, hold that thought. Present tense statement that your mind can also believe. How about this? My biggest commitment right now is to figure out how I can get more confident so that I can go on, hit that potential, and do all these things that I'm ready to be doing, right? That also feels true. My biggest opportunity right now is to get this confidence thing under control and supercharging me so that I can move forward. Yeah. So it's the awareness that there are many versions of truth. And the third thing, is the power of what some people call imagination. I like to call it our envisioning muscle, right? The imagination, most of us are trained after a certain age that it's only valid to use that thing for worry, self-doubt, and fear. Right. And as far anything else is called like daydreaming, or come on, be realistic. You're looking at your world through rose-colored glasses, and we mistake fear for actual danger a lot of times. So our ability to envision and without guilt, without feeling like we're wasting time, like this is a good investment, to envision potential, to envision possibility, often in the context of what we want to feel, not specifically how it has to roll out. Right. That often is taking you on a detour
Yeah.
Where you'll miss the actual place that you really had the opportunity to go. But to really practice feeling that feeling, so that what often happens is that kind of life catches up to this vision. And when you actually experience it, you get that feeling of, wow, this is wonderful. And yet it's not surprising because I've been here so many times before. So it's focus, it's language, and it's the ability to envision, and all the different ways throughout your day that you can use that to become the sovereign of your own mind, so that your mind no longer is showing up like your own worst enemy. And so that when you get in these moments where the actual boulders are falling in your life, it's easier for you to navigate beyond them without needing all the coping skills. I get so many people who ask me about coping skills, and it's like, okay, I can help you with that, but why are we needing to cope right now? What's going on? Right. And that sense of confidence in yourself, that I can risk putting myself in scenarios that some people might consider vulnerable, because I trust myself and my resources and tools. I won't stay down very long. I mean, I'll take the hit and it'll be like, oh, okay, up we go.
Yeah. And maybe that takes us wonderfully to the sort of next question I want to ask you, which is, I'm always interested with people who are putting all of their energy, or all of their work energy in particular, in helping others perform at their best. What gives you that energy for you to be performing at your best?
Yeah, that's a fascinating question. And it's a question that people often ask me. And what's really, really fascinating to me as well is that I've also had a lot of people in my own industry who will say, as if they're assuming this is just a given. What am I assuming that is not necessarily true? It's like, yeah, I mean, my gosh, I give my all during the day. At the end of the day, I feel like I've given it all, and I barely have anything to give my family. And it's so interesting for me because I mean, if you have clients who talk to me, or even my family, at 8 o'clock at night, I am still energized. And is there one technique that is the secret sauce? I wouldn't say there is one technique. Do I do things like practice my envisioning? Absolutely. I do that in the morning. I do that before I go, as I go to sleep. And yet what it really is, are those harmonizing those three. What am I focusing on, and what am I making it mean? What language am I choosing? I never show up as my own worst enemy. Right. So I think that's very debilitating during the day. If you can't get rid of your worst critic, they're following with you wherever you go. That's exhausting, right? And then envisioning, I am able to sometimes see potential in my clients that I don't think they can even see themselves. Right. And to me, that is so exhilarating and so exciting. So when you learn, and I can almost feel some of the pushback going, oh my God, but that is so hard. Hard is going through your life and getting to the point where you look back on your life and you feel like, oh my gosh, I haven't truly lived. Hard is when you wake up in the morning and go, oh my gosh, nothing's going to change. Hard is not saying, let me first start by becoming aware, right? I use the acronym ACT. Right. ACT. Let me start by first becoming aware. And I'm going to celebrate when I see myself doing something that, I can adjust that. That is within my power. Right. So I'm going to commit to changing it. So instead of walking around all day saying, oh, well, I was really good at that, but I'm going to say, so I was really good at that, so I am ready to da-da-da-da-da,
and there's
right?
language again, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's the language, good pickup. And then T, to realize that transformation is simply making the decision to make another choice. Right. Choose something different. Be a different version of yourself. You are not locked into having to fix the past. Choose instead to create a powerful future using all of these gems from the past.
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And let me ask this question. If you could help any individual or team or organization with the skill set and the experience and the story that you've got, who would you want that to be?
Oh my gosh. So first of all, I mean, I work with people from every shape and form and age. And, I haven't worked with anyone who's polka dotted yet, but I have no doubt that that will come. But what I really actually love working with people who have spent a good portion of their life in the corporate world,
Right.
Who have not necessarily had the exposure to anything related to their inner game. And typically, a lot of these people are just so exhausted from being hit by circumstance, and they're desperately feeling like there's some circumstance that I just haven't figured out to be able to get it right. I love working with people who have been really evolved and exposed. It's still fun to be able to take people at that level to a higher level, but people who this is a life ring for them. This is so mind blowing. I take every single one of my clients through one exercise, which is called the Epic You Story, where we literally map out not only where they are, but who they are.
Right.
I have not had a single person that this wasn't incredibly emotional for, because they've never seen themselves through that such objectivity, and seen how empowering that really is. And so, yes, in the corporate world, I love working with corporate professionals, because there's studies out there that when team members when they consider themselves happy, they are anywhere from 20%, or if they're in sales, 37% more productive. So to help someone be able to not only love what they do and then do what they love, to be able to say, oh my gosh, I'm making such a great living, and it's thanks to my work that I'm coming fully alive. That to me is such a gift.
Wonderful.
Such a gift.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I haven't been through that myself. I think, and helping others in that space, I think that is something where people, they're again going back to their assumptions that in order to be successful at work, I have to have compromise at home, and the other way around. And just challenging those assumptions and getting through there. So I'm going to flip that question around a little bit and say, if you could sit down and have a coffee, have a meal, have a drink with somebody that that at the end of that conversation you're just going to be blown away and filled with even more energy to help you perform, who do you want that to be?
Yes. Well, for me, who would very much be plural.
Right.
It would be more like a round table, and it would be some of the great innovators and insiders in all different areas. It would be amazing to be at a table with, I think, some of the most curious minds of I won't call it generation, but of the people who are currently on this planet. So even whether it's the Tony Robbins, the Esther Hicks, the Vishen Lakianis, there's just so many there, Lisa Nichols. I'm a lifelong learner, and I love challenging myself in the positive way, to really, expand to a place where I may not yet be. And so I spent 5 days in Albuquerque with the amazing Lisa Nichols, and I walked away, to your point, just like, oh my gosh, this is a whole aspect of me, and it frees you up. So it would really be this, maybe even an entire ballroom event filled with these amazing, curious minds. And even if we could scoop some people back up, like the Nelson Mandela, not still be with us, that to me would be, I'm even getting truth bumps. I'm like, oh my gosh, if we could, that would be, just imagine, throughout times, throw in Socrates and Plato and a few people in the mix. And I think, and heck, invite a few superheroes. I think it doesn't get better than that.
Brilliant stuff. Yeah. And I love that aspect of just being able to pull out the little nuggets from all those different angles and stitch it together for your benefit as well. So fascinating stuff. And what I'd love to hear from you right now is, what's the one thing that this audience should go away from listening to this amazing conversation, this truly inspiring story, and the tools and techniques that you've talked about? What's the one thing that you think the audience should be going away thinking about off the back of this?
So of all the profound lessons that I think that boulder gifted me, that I think you should not have to be crushed by a boulder in order to experience, is the understanding that whatever this translates to you, this I now know, that we may not be able to control how long we get to play on this amazing planet, but ultimately we, not our circumstances, not our critics, not our fans, nobody else controls how epically we live while we are playing here than we do. And so it is up to you, regardless of what has gone on in the past, regardless of what is going on in the present. This is your precious moment that you have not yet lived. Take it, seize it, maximize it, savor it, and least of all, do not allow you to be the one who compromises it.
Wonderful stuff, and something for all of us to go out of this and just reflect on that question in its own right, never mind going back and thinking some of those amazing other questions that you've raised and some of the points and the circumstances and the approaches that we've talked about. So, I mean, absolutely fascinating, and people are going to be wanting to reach out and learn more about you and what you do. So where do people go to find out more from here, Meridith?
Well, not shockingly, I am all over social media. So look me up. It's Meridith with 2 eyes. Think of human beings. I have 2 eyes, Meridith, Meridith Alexander. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, YouTube, all those places. If you would, of course, like to grab either the story of Skylar or the 100 Days of Epic, which is gamified. Literally, it's exactly what it sounds like, 100 days of applications that will dramatically transform your life. Gamified. Both of those are on Amazon. But if you feel like you would literally want to brainstorm for 15, maybe 20 minutes with me, just because you have listened to this podcast, and this is just like such a great thing that you're doing, I will drop a link. It's bit.ly/go epic now. All 3 words are capitalized. So bit.ly/go epic now. And I, not one of my team, I will hop on a Zoom with you for 15, 20 minutes, brainstorm, and help you maybe be able to detangle what is that next big step for you, and what do you need specifically right here, right now, in order to make that happen. There are a lot of theories and processes out there. What there's not a lot of is actual application, and that is my jam. So if you've been feeling stuck, frustrated, close to giving up, go epic now. Booyah.
Fantastic. And we will, as always, have those links directly in the show notes, so people can just go down to those show notes, find that. We'll have links to the books, we'll have links to the bit.ly link that you mentioned, and all of your other social links will be down there. So as always, I encourage my audience, reach out to my guests and take this opportunity. This is a real opportunity for you to go out and make a big difference and really focus on that thing that you're wanting to achieve. Here's an opportunity for you to get some help and some amazing assistance and some inspiration to move forward.
And let me mention one more thing too. If you are listening to this and you have a team, you either want me to maybe speak to your team, that's totally possible. Go to my speaking website, which is meridithalexander.com. However, I also do coach teams. In fact, I even have a 5-day Epic U team challenge, which is virtual. I do a lot of virtual coaching for entire groups because it so up levels the performance. So don't assume that it has to be just you. Change can happen in a really powerful way when we all are in it together.
Wonderful, wonderful stuff. And as always, that link will be in there as well. So much to think about, so much of a story to reflect on, to think about some of those questions ourselves. Thank you so much for bringing your story and for bringing Skylar's story to us today. Best of luck to yourself and to Skylar on the journey going forward. And thanks so much for being on the show today, Meridith Alexander.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you are listening to this, make sure that you are subscribed to this, because this is the caliber that he brings. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, be sure to share it and get it out there, because podcasts are really the way that we up-level ourselves and surround ourselves with some of the best people in the world, right?
Brilliant stuff. Thanks so much, Meridith. Have yourself a great day. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you liked what you heard, then please give the podcast a rate, review, and share. I'm Paul Teasdale, and from sausage making to banking, oil and gas to Formula One, I help people perform. If you'd like to find out more and have a conversation, contact me via helpingpeopleperform.com.